All right, this next one I'm going to tie is a Comparadun, and we're going to tie it in a Callibaetis color, but you can change the color of this very easily just by changing the color of the thread or the dubbing, and I'll show you how we're going to go about it. This is a sort of a guide fly, great dry fly, low floating fly, and cheap to tie because there's no hackle. It just uses fine deer hair for the wings. So a lot of times you'll see that sold as Comparadun deer or deer Hock. Either one of those hairs will work wonderfully for this. I like the stuff from Nature Spirit. They seem to have the best hair going these days, so that's what I've been using for this one. I'm going to start with a Tiemco 100 SPBL. And in this case, I've actually got an old spool of GSP 50 Denier GSP in brown. Ta-da! They don't make it in brown anymore, so you can't get this. You can use white. You'll see it doesn't show anywhere on the fly, so really not a big deal. But I've still got this spool of brown, so I'm going to use it. And what I'll do here is I'm going to start the thread at about 80% on the hook. And I'm going to leave myself a tag end. And I'm going to wrap back over this tag end all the way back to the bend. And I want to try to keep that tag end right up on top. I'm going to use some tan microfibrils or tailing fibers for the tail. And in the case of this size 16, I'm going to use 4 of them. So I'm going to put 2 on each side. So I want to even up the tips as close as I can get of 4 of these fibers. And I'll measure these against the shank, so they're at least a shank length long. On dry flies, you can err a little bit on the longer side, especially when they're a sparse tail like this. So I'm going to take and grab those at that measured point, and I'm going to catch them at the bend with a couple of turns. I'm going to let my thread travel forward just a bit. And I can tell that those tails are up on top of the hook because these butt ends are on top of the hook. The tails that I'm holding onto in my fingertips are going to follow where those butt ends go. Now I'm going to take my thumbnail up underneath the butt ends of the tail. You can see I can kind of lift and spread those. And what I want are 2 on each side. And don't be afraid to sort of manhandle and manipulate these as need be. So see how I've just got them divided into 2 separate clumps. Got 2 very separate clumps. And I'm going to pick up my tag end and bring it up between them. And when I do that, you can see that will influence the tails, and I want to get them spread out from each other, and I don't mind if the individual fibers on each side are a little spread out. That's going to give us some more surface area. So you can see as I pull on that tag end how I can control how much spread or which direction or tilt that I have to the tail. Once I've got it where I want it, I'll tie that tag end down and come forward over the tag end of the thread and the butt ends of the tail back up to where I started and trim that out. So now I'm going to dub the abdomen, and now I'm tying a size 16 here, but I'm still going to use a tiny little bit of dubbing. And this is just happens to be Callibaetis colored superfine dubbing. But whatever color superfine dubbing you want to tie, I'm going to dub this on very thin. And I'm going to work back so that my first turn of dubbing, as I get there, is going to come behind the tail. And you can see as I lift that forward, that'll lift those tails. And the next turn right in front. And I'm going to just work forward from there. I'm going to build a tapered abdomen. It gets a little thicker toward the front, right where up where I started that thread. Then I'll end with bare thread on the bare hook and make a thread base up to the hook eye and back again. Now, conventionally, the Comparadun, you would have tied the wing in first and had a big clump of butt ends to contend with here on top of the hook, trying to keep a skinny body with that big clump of butt ends on top. The way I'm going to do this is a little different, and it eliminates that big bulk of the butt ends on top of the hook, as well as leave some of the hollow butt ends of the hair on the fly where they're going to do us some good as far as flotation goes. So I've got a nice piece of Comparadun deer here. You can see this is real short-tipped fine deer hair. And I'm going to cut off a pretty good sized clump for a size 16. I like a nice heavy bunch, like so. And I'm going to hold it as close to the tips as I can, and I want to get that cleaned out as well as I can. A lot of times I'll use a wire dubbing brush to clean that underfur out of that shortest hair, just so I can make sure I get all of it. And then I'll stack this up in my small size stacker. So I've got a nice clean stack, a nice even bunch there. I'll pull that out of my stacker. And now I'm going to take this clump of hair and I'm going to measure it against the hook. So I want it 1 shank length long. So you can see those black tips are right up behind the hook eye. And my thumbnail here on the back side, you guys can't quite see it, is right at the bend, right at the base of the tail. So what I'll do, once I've got that measurement, I'm going to butt this hair in my other hand right up to that point, like so. And I'm going to trim those butt ends off as straight as I can with good sharp scissors. Ideally with 1 cut, so I've got nice square butt ends. So I've got those butt ends cut square. I'm going to overlap them just barely onto the front of the dubbing. I've spun my thread a bit and I'm going to take 2 turns, one right on top of the other, while I'm holding onto the tips of the hair. I'm going to slide my fingers back just a bit. I'm going to tighten this thread toward me and you can see those butt ends will flare up in place. I'll finish that off with 1 more turn to flare that hair up. Now I'm going to close my fingers under the hook. I've got my thumb and index finger on either side of the hook. Now I'm going to sweep this hair up and back, like so. I'm going to bring the thread to the front, and I'm going to begin to build a thread dam. And what I want to do is dam this thread right up against the front of the wing. So as I'm making these wraps, my thread on top of the hook is in front of the wing, but on the bottom I really push it way back behind the wing in order to jam those thread wraps right up against the base of the hair to stand it upright. Now, don't worry about it being exactly perfectly preened just yet. We can do that after the fact. So now I'm going to take another little pinch of superfine dubbing. And it does take a little bit more up here than you think because we're going to use this to help position the wing. And again, I'm going to dub that down as tightly as I can. I'm going to hold that wing back in place. I'm going to dub from just behind the hook eye back up to the base of the wing. And as I get there, I'm going to kind of do that same thing that I was doing with the thread dam, just with the dubbed thread. I'm going to jam those wraps of dubbing right up against the base of the wing. And as I run out, I want to be back up at the hook eye. And then I'll whip finish there. Trim my thread. And now I can sort of position my wing. I'm just going to stand him up a bit more. I've got a couple long ones out here on this side. I don't want to make this final trim yet. So see across the bottom, we've still got some of those stubs sticking out. What I'm going to do, I've got to turn it so I can see it. I want to trim those off flat. So I'm just going to come in with my scissors and trim those flat. It also adds a little width to the thorax across the bottom of the fly. And then I can spread that wing out. And I don't really go for the 180 degree perfect half circle shape on this fly. I like it to be a little bit more upright. About like so. For our Comparadun wing, you can see how that hair is flared across the front. Everybody makes fun of me about broken tips, but you see that broken tip that's sticking out of that wing? Do you see how that sticks out like a sore thumb? When you're out fishing and you throw this fly out on the water and you've got a big cutthroat swimming up to eat it, and you see him coming from 20 feet away and he cruises right over, he comes right up to your fly, swims up, looks at it, and turns around and swims away. It's because of broken tips like that right there. So we're going to get that out of there. I've just got to be able to see it. There, he's gone. So much better. I feel better about it. I hope you feel better about it. And there's our little Callibaetis Comparadun. Cool little fly. Really very quick and easy to tie. You don't have to be near as picky as I am, but I ain't going to complain if you are. That's how you get good, is be picky. You can see those butt ends add a lot of floatation, a lot of surface area to the fly, but don't really change the bottom profile of the fly. So we added a little bit of an element to this fly just by changing the way we tie the wing in or where we tie it in. And we've got our Comparadun. Hope you like that one. Tied up in a bunch of colors. It's a good bluing olive imitation. Works great for PMDs too. Just change the colors of the dubbing. This is sort of a tan colored deer hair, but you can obviously get more grayish colored deer hair as well. Mix match, you can put a shuck on the end rather than the tail, and you'll have a sparkle done. Lots of variations on the theme, and quick and easy to tie. It's all yours. Get to it.